Hello everyone. At the moment, we are in Sarajevo Film Festival with the director of Love Dogs, Bianca Lucas. Hi.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
And oh, sorry.
No, that's fine.
Also, Deniz is with me too. Hi, Deniz.
Yeah, hi Enes. We should start actually right now.
Okay, I'll start. Me and Deniz watched Love Dogs in meeting points in Sarajevo, and we actually find it really nice movie and wanted to talk about the director. So the film take place in America during the pandemic, and we watch the main characters confront his traumas and as he finish in his jobs in Texas and returns home. So I will start asking the pandemic, something that everyone has experienced in their own way. I mean the loneliness, and in the film you can see the loneliness of the characters in form too. I mean, most of the time, instead of seeing the characters talking to each other in one shoot, we see them in separate shoot. So in this context, I would like to ask what you pay attention to while keeping this balance between the content and form of the film.
That's a really good question, actually, and I'm happy that you noticed that was intentional, because it was intentional. So yeah, the film was shot during the pandemic, but it's not really. It's not about the pandemic. I think this is a film about grief, and the pandemic added another layer because it added a collective layer of grief. But in any case, I would have focused on the personal grief of this main character, and whether it would be a pandemic or not, he would be as isolated as he is right now in the film, because when you're going through such intense grief and you don't have the tools to know how to express it or handle it in a healthy way, then you will isolate yourself. And so, but really the story was secondary to me. I wanted to just present the very basic facts of the fact that, okay, here's a guy, he's coming back home, and there's been this major event in his life, and he lost someone that he loves, and he's grieving. As I just wanted, for me the script was just super superficial. I just wanted to communicate those facts so that we could focus more on the feeling and the atmosphere and the texture of the film. And of course, the visual language is something that is very, very, very important to me. I definitely think more in terms of shot and cinematic language, visual language, than in terms of script and story. So, as you said, you're right, especially in the beginning. I tried to avoid having a shot in which he would be, for example, if he has an interaction with someone, we almost never see them together in the shot. I have the shots separately of him and of the person that he's interacting with, because there's always a barrier between him and the world around him. And when we get towards the end of the film, there are more shots where he's together in one shot with people.
For example, with the dogs and the huggings, and this style kind of reminds me Zoom conversation, because I mean we are separated in there too. And
I have a very similar question with your answer actually, and Enes talks, and in the film we see several different phases of the dealing with the grief and trauma, and I can say that we see the main character's conversation in random chat rooms about the American myths and essentially the collapse of the American dream are part of the dealing with grief. The fact that the story takes place in Mississippi also contributes to this narrative actually. If you had the effect of the pandemic to this collapse, where did you position these elements while constructing your narrative?
So, like I said, I think I wanted two layers to the film: the personal, intimate grief that he's going through, because that is in relation to one particular loss, but also behind that, in the background, a collective sense of grief and confusion. And I think that every civilization thrives on mythology, and eventually has to come to a moment where it confronts the collapse of that mythology, and that it eventually gets, because every lie has an end, right? In Polish, because I'm Polish, we say a lie has very short legs. It's not going to go very far. But we have to build societies on lies, because we have to build societies on mythologies, because that's the glue, that's the social glue. So I think it's a very interesting moment in the States, because I think that now is the moment where, and this happened with Roman civilization, with all the big civilizations, where that domination, the ideological domination of the U.S. is no longer convincing. And it's very painful to the people there, because they were raised to believe it so deeply that for them to see that it's actually maybe unattainable or no longer feels real is very painful to them, because they've been wired and conditioned to live their lives according to a certain set of ideas in the U.S. Like, pull yourself by the bootstraps, be strong, don't show weakness, strive for winning. Winning is a big thing. Everyone has to be a winner. But it's a very toxic mental...
Actually, it's very similar happens, and very similar things happen in American election, like the Trump's election and the Make America Great Again things. I think maybe you could maybe you want to add something about that.
I think I understand why so many people voted for Trump, because he sold them an idea that it's possible to get this American dream back. I mean, he also sold this idea that the American dream once really worked. It never really worked. The lie worked for a little bit, and that's strong. That makes people feel safe. But like I said, that lie had short legs. It revealed itself. The circus revealed itself, and you can't go back once that happens. But I think Trump offered this hope that no. Actually, it's real, and we can go back, and you can feel safe again. I will make you feel safe again. And obviously that failed too, or is failing. Some people are really desperate to hold on to it. But I don't know if I answered your question, but yeah.
Actually, I have to say things to say. Some Turkish critic, which I really love, Kulukan Kutlu, he says that we are living in a post-middle age, so we have our technology which is really developed and keep going like that, but we have no such developed moral and ethic. We keep living the moral of 2000 years ago. The other question that I want to ask, sorry for talking about pandemic, but with the pandemic, I mean directors had to find the new filmmaking methods. And speaking of this, I thought a lot of Lars von Trier's movie, The Five Obstruction. There are 5 different obstacles were put in front of a director to tell a story, and each time the director had to come up with the creative solution to overcome these obstacles. In your case, there's a dating app style sites to establish the world of the film. And also, there's a world where people tell their situation through radio channels that they write poems and said. So I would like to ask, in this context, what kind of difficulties did you experience, and how did you construct your narrative of the film and the world of the film?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I love Lars von Trier, and I think that the Dogma movement is a huge gift to the history of cinema. He really cut through the bullshit, He just said, if you really want to make a film, you can make a film. and all these luxuries that you're demanding are just layers to protect yourself from something scary, because it's very scary to create something. I always knew I had very little to make this film, because we just had a very little money, and we had a camera that we borrowed, and it was just me and my cinematographer. But I didn't anticipate the pandemic. So we arrived in March 2020 in the US, and we were thinking we were going to do a documentary about the community, and John was always going to be a main leading protagonist, because I just found that he was a really interesting, touching, sensitive person that was full of contradictions. So he was a really good guide through that community. But a week after we arrived in the States, the borders closed, so I had even less to work with than when what I thought I would have, because now everyone went into lockdown and we couldn't even meet anyone. We couldn't go into a bar and talk to all the people in the bar and go with him to different, gathering places, community gathering places to navigate this world. So I had to find creative solutions, and to some extent it happened organically. I just tried to look at the simple facts of reality, which is humans need and always will need to connect, and they're always going to find a way to do it. Even if they're on a deserted island, they're going to start talking to a tree. So what was happening at that time? People were going on chat roulette more, and going on dating apps, and maybe noticing nature a little bit more. I mean, most of the ways in which people tried to connect to the world were maybe not very gracious, I would say. But that's what was happening, and I was just going with that. I was just observing and trying to incorporate that without losing the main theme of the film, which is that this man is in such grief that he's becoming delirious, and he's very suppressed. So and then also the dog came along, and I thought, well, animals, there's a reason why animal assisted therapy works. It's because animals can be a mirror for us, and the dog was actually John's cousin's dog, and it was kind of neglected and abandoned, and we took the dog in. We took him to the vet. The dog had a lot of issues in the beginning, and we healed him, and he was living with us in the house, because we were all living together, John, my actor, my DP, and me, during the lockdown. And so this creature arrived where, we could project the characters' feelings and, phases of grief onto. And that was very important. So every time we had a limitation, our lens, and luckily I was working with someone who also didn't want to give up, my cinematographer, because many people would have. The lens mount broke, so then we had to start taping the lenses to the camera. My sound guy never came because of the pandemic, so I started recording sound. One of our lavaliers broke, so we only had one lav, like this. So then I thought, okay, well, fuck it, it'll become part of the film. Actually he's so isolated that maybe that's an advantage. Maybe that's something I didn't think of, that when he's talking, we only hear him, and the replies of the other people out of shot are distant. So it's okay. Let's just use one lav, and we'll change it depending on who we're focused on. We were taping we had this Zoom recorder. We were taping it to a broom, and we were taping light bulbs to a broom. We just made it work, and it was hard, and I would like to have some bigger luxuries for my next project, but I was so determined that I tried to look at every limitation as a portal to ideas that I would not have had otherwise.
And I just want to add something and ask a question. We actually see the character as both of the protagonist and antagonist of himself. In addition, maybe we can say the same about the process of coping with every grief, actually. Actually, there's a cliche in the cinema, don't work with children and animals. But in your story, the dog is positioned to reflect this story in a way. Was the dog like the inside Llewyn Davis situation for you, the trigger for the story to be told, or did you really write it's a part of the character's stories? Can you talk a little bit about the process?
Yeah, so when we arrived in, first of all, I always work with children and dogs. You know, there's always at least one dog in there's always at least one dog somewhere in my life, even though I myself can't have a dog because I'm too unstable in my life. But yeah, I find them so touching. I think that they really communicate something about, you know, they've been engineered to be loyal to humans, and there's something so weird and touching about that they've been bred to love us. So when we arrived, for 3 weeks I had no idea what to do because the whole world went into lockdown. Everyone was super scared. We didn't know what we were dealing with. This was the first wave of the pandemic. So, and after 2 or 3 weeks, I said, okay, I'm gonna make it simple. This is gonna be about a guy who's very isolated and he's going through his process of grief, and we're just gonna try our best to show it with the little elements that we have. And I didn't write a script, but I wrote a list of scenes, and very quickly the dog became part of that, and the dog very quickly became part of the story. And I think the dog is a trigger to show how repressed he is and how passive aggressive actually he's passive aggressive, he's also active aggressive, because the dog of course represents the loss, represents a mirror, but he doesn't want to accept that. So it's the interaction between him and the dog is very useful to show the stages that he's going from repression and suppression to acceptance.
While speaking of dog, the main character of the film, John, is not someone who can be easily liked for us as a audience. Although the situation he's in easy to empathize, but it's not so easy to love the character, especially the scene where he leaves the dog to the forest. So it's a scene that alienates the audience from John. I would like to ask what kind of factors you paid attention to while designing the character of this John.
Well, I think I wanted us to be able to enter into his feelings, and he hates himself in that moment so much. So we have to hate him too. And when he starts accepting and loving himself a bit more, so do we, I hope, as the audience towards the end of the film. So it's really just as simple as that. Of course, you know, it's not that I want to alienate the audience, but I don't want to lie to them either. Is suffering so much that he's actually intolerable to the world, to himself and to the world around him. There's no way around that, or I didn't find a better way at that time to show it than to show how alienating and alienated he is. But I'm hoping that towards the end of the film I close that distance.
I have a question about the places actually. The not so organized American town appearance we see in the character's journey has many similarities with the character's mood actually. We see that people who send message to the radio share their problems, also contribute to this depressive air. What were the things you paid attention to when choosing all the places?
I didn't really. It's not that I chose places that were so specific. That's just how it is there. You know, I spent a lot of time there, and we lived there together for quite a few weeks before we started turning the camera on. And those were the places we were going to. That was our route. That was the supermarket we were going to. That was the house we lived in. That was the river we looked at. That was his friend's home. That was how the motel was. It just is like that. So I didn't have to select very particular locations to give that atmosphere. That atmosphere was just there, and I had to trust that if we followed the logic, the emotional logic of the character in the film, that would come out. So yeah.
As a last question, or I don't know, is it a question or what, but I know you're a fan of Casavete. I can see it from Instagram username. So our podcast also have his name from Shadows, a Can Casavete film. So also you have some improvisational things in your film, and the main character actually is not an actor. So I want to talk about the effects of Casavetes on your cinema, if there is such a thing.
Yeah, there's a huge influence for sure. I think when I first discovered Cassavetes's work, I couldn't believe that it was scripted, and then it turns out that it was actually quite closely scripted. I really don't know how he did it. I think that he was so brilliant because he was also an actor, so he could maybe enter. And a lot of actors become such great directors because they know how to communicate things to actors in a way that can get absorbed. I think the influence that he had on me was that he was uncompromising in terms of looking at all of the aspects of a human psyche. He was never scared of that complexity, and he always followed that logic. He wasn't pedantic about story. He was pedantic about showing as closely and in as authentic a way as he could the emotional texture of the character or the main characters, it's the worlds that he shows, that he creates, the characters that he has, the psychologies that he's interested in are very close to what I'm interested in and to maybe how I perceive the world. So I think that's the best that I can say about that. Yeah.
Really nice answer, actually. Thanks for talking with us, and thanks for talking about Casavete. So goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye. Thank you for having me.